There we go. There we go. There we go.
Well, I thank you very much for joining us today. Last night in the bigger Corso cinema, it was an extraordinary outburst of passionate commitment to the characters you've created over such a long period. And today, in this masterclass, you've been kind enough to give us some time to talk about, let's say, the more discreet side of your personality, the personality of the writer, the personality of the director, who I wouldn't say is self-effacing, but someone who is content to remain in the background. In the case of Staying Alive, for example, many people think of that as a John Travolta movie.
Yeah,
they don't think any further.
I
In
know.
fact, you've done.
Exactly.
And I was thinking last night how few people there are in the history of the cinema who've managed to be major stars and direct and write in the way that you have done over such a long period. I mean, you could name them on two fingers or two hands. You've got Charles Chaplin, you've got Orson Welles, Laurence Olivier,
Wow.
and Clint Eastwood. There are times, but you belong in that select band.
Thank you.
And you've written, I believe, over 20 screenplays. You've directed 10 or so films. And when you look back on your career, of those three crafts, the acting, the writing, the directing, which would you say is the most demanding?
The writing, no question, because the writing is make or break. It's also the most singular of all the arts. It's you and the page, and quite often it causes you to go very deep inside, and that also can bring out a great deal of insecurity, because if you cannot deliver the story to be able to communicate to people, you start doubting yourself, and then quite often you get writer's block. And I had to teach myself early on, expect to fail. Expect it, covet it, welcome it. It's going to happen, but don't. It's not a permanent state.
Right.
And so, but without a doubt, we were talking about it. Directing is the most rewarding. It's like you're now. It's one thing to write the music; it's another to conduct the orchestra. That's the best.
But also, you came in at a time when Final Cut was
Yeah.
gradually becoming the norm, as opposed to the 50s and 60s when it was a battle.
Exactly right. And we have to thank a lot of the younger film like Coppola, who they were successful, and I guess Scorsese and even George Lucas, when these smaller filmmakers started to deliver financially, they go, okay, we want Final Cut, and that really did change the face of filmmaking.
We're going to show our first clip from Paradise Alley, but before we do, I mean,
I didn't know that it still existed.
It does. It's on the Reach'em 1 DVD.
Oh.
We managed to track down.
I can't even find it on DVD. Really?
Yeah,
I swear.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I can't remember it's a weird company that put it out. It's not a major.
No, it's for sure it's a strange
Wasn't
company.
it?
I know.
I forget which one it was. But could you tell us a little bit? I mean, it opens with the words, as I recall, New York City, 1946. Now, you were born in 1946.
I was born in 46, right.
Now, does that film really well up from your personal experience?
No question about it. It's Hell's Kitchen, New York was a very, very tough neighborhood, and the way I sort of survived it is in my mind, try to imagine a better place, Paradise Alley. So Paradise Alley was really a state of mind. You would go and say, God, I go to this horrible place, and I live in these horrible streets, but somewhere in there is Paradise Alley, the chance to break out. So I wrote this film, which is kind of I guess, surrealistic in a way, because it was not meant to be hardcore realism. It was meant to be like a state of mind, kind of a fantasy. And it didn't do very well because in America they say, what is it? It's like a feathered fish. What is it, a fish? Is it a bird?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, I just tried to experiment with a lot of things, and we had to cut a great deal of it out because it became even more surreal. But I really enjoyed working this is the first time I understood about camera movement and lighting, and I was trying to actually borrow, I would go to museums and look at the lighting of some of the masters, especially Renaissance painters, and you say, wow, that's fantastic. If you could just sort of get that feel. And I hired a man named Vilmo Zsigmond, Laszlo Kovacs,
Yeah.
who and he started to get me into that what I call like Germanic kind of lighting. Yeah.
How did you get it over? How did you? That I think would be of interest to everyone in the audience. How did you manage to pitch your first?
Pitch that. We had just finished Rocky, and I was, not considered as a director at all. And I said, if I could just, if I promised them a good film, a big film, they'd let me do my little film. But more importantly, I just said, I will take no fee, nothing, and if it doesn't work, I will pay you back in some way. That's how it worked. It would be a little different if that were. Actually, I wrote that before Rocky, and I had sold it because I was very poor. I had sold the screenplay for $100. True story. About $110. And the opportunity came when I went on an audition, and I didn't get the part, but I said I write a little bit. They said, do you happen to have anything? I said, I had the screenplay called Paradise Alley. I brought it to the producers. They go, oh, we like this. We buy this script for $20,000. And I said, well, I don't exactly own it. I sold it for $100. So I went and I brought those men who bought it for $100, and they hated each other. So now they said, we would make it, but we hate them. That's when I went, well, here's the opportunity. The door is open. And that's when I went home and started to write Rocky. Because I said, the door is open, but I don't have anything.
Yeah.
See? I said, let me think. All right, let me just write about everyday people who want an opportunity but can't get one, and I'll just put them in the body of a boxer. And that's how it all happened.
One of the strong points about that film is the way you evoke a time and a place so well, and it's the same with Rocky, Philadelphia, and so on. How much time as a screenwriter do you devote to researching, in that way, to get that real, authentic atmosphere?
A lot. I think that when you write, you try to visualize the atmosphere as a character that's almost as important as your lead. Because I've seen so many films where you have an interesting premise, but the ambience, the surrounding is boring. And so I like there with haze and red colors and just all these different diversions. So I spend a great deal of time researching it. But usually when you get there, it changes, either the weather or your philosophy. You know what? Maybe I should minimalize. Maybe I should be tighter. We have these grand visions. Oh, I want to do some incredible visual shot, and I say, am I doing this for myself? Is this really important to the story? Or should I just try to keep the character and the energy of the story going and not try to show off your abilities? It's kind of an ongoing battle. Like in the last film with Rambo, it was a choice to, here I had incredible vistas in Thailand and Cambodia. I'm at Cambodia on the border of Burma. Then I said, but this is not a story. It's a story about this, story about this, So you have to constantly changing.
And also you're on screen there, and I'm thinking in Rocky and in Rambo, you're on screen a lot of the time. And when you direct yourself, are those scenes harder to do than the ones where you're not, and you're able to stand behind the camera and really check?
Contrary to what people say, I think it's easy to direct yourself. I mean, you certainly should know yourself by now. I know pretty much what I can do and I can't do. So I learn every line in the screenplay, everyone's line. Because usually you write it, so I know the screenplay as well as I know my hand. That way I can focus on everything else. So if I'm doing a scene, I'm really looking at the character over there, I'm watching the light, I'm over here, is this man messing up his lines? Right. So it's kind of comfortable. Because you're it's like you're just on automatic pilot. Yeah.
You particularly like montage scenes, in Staying Alive, when Tony sees Finola Hughes for the first time and she's dancing, and you merge them. And in Rocky Balboa, there's a similar sequence. And do you write such montage sequences at the screenplay stage, or do you only introduce those when you're directing?
That's interesting. Usually on a fight scene, I'll write montage because fight scenes can be incredibly redundant.
Yeah.
So you try to take the highlights, or with the montage you can also be a bit more emotional than just literally doing fight scenes. Like there's a huge montage in this. And same with, I feel that montage are much more sensual. So, but quite often you're in a film and you go, God, I have all this footage. Why don't I just make a montage? Because the movie will be 3 hours long, so I can take an hour of footage and put it into 3 minutes of montage, and you get the feeling. Also, it's really what separates a great deal of difference between literature and painting. Cinema has the ability to do montage, which not many art forms do.
Yes.
Almost none, really.
And it's very moving at the end of, or in Rocky Balboa, where you're able to integrate footage from the earlier ones, with Talia Shire and so on, that becomes very, very moving.
Yeah, montage is incredible. I mean, some people think of it as, not as important or as cinematic or as serious. But it's always worked for me. I enjoy it a great deal. Actually, it's a skill in itself. I may have to just use a particular editor. That's all he does. He has that gift. Right. He can't even cut a normal scene. He's terrible. Right. But he can do brilliant montage. Funny.
And I'm thinking of the flair in which something like the Las Vegas fight sequence, which you said in a recent interview, I think you said you had only 3 days to film it.
Yeah, we had. That was
and how do you marshal all of those crowds? How do you do that? Do you build a team of assistants? Clearly, with a major studio picture, you have assistants and so on. But how much direct control do you have over those very big scenes?
Actually, once the film starts, you don't have a lot. You have to depend upon your team. I go out there and I make a speech to everyone and say, okay, we're now doing Rocky, we're going to do this. I know it's going to be a little slow, sometimes it's going to be fast, but just please listen to these people. Right. And especially this group here, because I'm really going to focus on you, and I want to focus. So right away they feel they think they're going to be in the movie more, so they stay put. Yeah. And I'm going to focus on you to go, oh, really? So right away they all feel important. But once it starts, especially in that last film, which became very physical, you must rely upon your crew, and then you hope, because we're having 9 cameras, 8 cameras, that the cameramen will be somewhat creative, but sometimes they don't. They're terrible. They start to focus on one person, and they miss the entire. That's the trouble when you're working with multiple cameras, to get everyone trying to get your vision, and it doesn't usually work.
Nearly all of the films that you've created personally, you feel the central figure is in a way an outsider. He's at the center of things, very often applauded for what he's done, but deep down he's alone, and he has difficulty in relating to people. I mean, that's a theme, I think.
And it's when I've held true to that, it's been what I consider successful. When I've avoided that relationship, let me make it simple, when the character becomes stronger than the audience, you lose your audience. The character has to have as many problems as the people in the audience. Then they can relate. Like, here's a guy who's tough, world champion, but he's scared. He's still nervous. And everyone, I don't care who you are, when you sit in front of this, you get nervous. When you go, you're nervous. And it's that connection. So it's very, very, very important to use the, let's say, 10 or 15 identifiable things that we all have in common: jealousy, fear, ego, lack of ego, insecurity, over security, all these things that we tend to, pride, this, that, and false pride. That kind of thing is what makes the character absolutely relate to the audience. And when I don't do it, it's a disaster. And I have done a few disasters like that, because, okay, let me make a super person. And so now you're just sitting back there unemotionally involved. And when you lose the emotions of a movie, wow. But also putting emotions in a movie is a very, very delicate situation. A lot of people find it embarrassing because if you're too emotional, too romantic, you're considered corny, silly, not serious. So it's a very delicate line. We all want to be touched emotionally, but no serious filmmaker wants to be called sentimental.
Right.
But don't be afraid of sentiment, because we all have it. When you have, you go home, when your dog sits on your lap, you go, oh, we're all suckers, all right? We're all very sentimental, really. It's there. You can't hide it. Yeah.
And there are many films you've done where I'm sure you feel that if only I could have had a hand in the screenplay.
Oh, man.
I'm thinking of a film which is very thoroughly enjoyable, like The Specialist. It's great fun. But you feel that if you'd had a real serious hand in the screenplay there, that film would have been much better.
There's a classic case where an agent is trying to put you in a film and using intimidation. For example, I read the screenplay, and I go, not bad, but needs a little bit of work, and I would like to make this more emotional. And there was a director named David Fincher who wanted to do it. I went, great. He had just done 7. I said, fantastic. Then the producer pulls me aside. He goes, we don't want David Fincher. I go, why? He's great. He's pretty. He goes, no. He has his own ideas. I go, yeah. Yes, he does have his own. What, you use your ideas?
Yeah.
Last movie you made was about a monkey who drives cars, okay? And then also in Karate Kid and things like that. It was like, give me a break. So David Fincher's out. Now they bring in another man who's very nice, but he's from Peru and there's a language problem. So I said, then at least let me rewrite the screenplay. They said, oh, the producer doesn't want you to touch the screenplay, and if you don't, I remember I was in Japan at the time doing publicity. They said, if you do not commit to this movie in the next 15 minutes, Warren Beatty's doing it. See how they do it? Warren Beatty's got it. 10 minutes, and they call me at 5 minutes. Warren Beatty. And they start going, oh shit, maybe I should. I go, okay, God damn it, I'll do it. And then you sell out. And that's what happens. Never again. But I did it again and again. You know what I mean? But they get you. See what I mean about they get that part of you, that ego, and you got to be really tough and strong about it.
But one of your best films where clearly you were able to have input was Cliffhanger. I mean, I see you have a co-screenplay credit on that.
Yes. Again, Cliffhanger was a germ of an idea. It's nice sometimes. It's very hard to start out with an original screenplay. Very, very daunting. You go, God. I mean, but if you have a character, you say, the character's interesting, the rest of the story's pretty bad. But the character, mountain climber, this and that, visual and symbolic, we're all part of climbing a mountain, coming down. I said, great. And now you start working with the screenplay, and that was really, really, truly enjoyable, because for an action film to try to, it was a bit different. But it was interesting. Sometimes just a little thing will trigger someone else's screenplay. It could be horrible. In Hollywood, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of screenplays that spent hundreds of millions of dollars on that will never be done. And they're in these vaults. Yeah. You just go through it and go, I'm doing that right now. I go, not bad. It's pretty bad, the whole story, but the interesting idea, interesting character, and that's all you need.
Yeah. And was that opening sequence in the original germ of the idea, this incredible opening where you lose when you think the heroine in the first 5 minutes?
No, because then again, you would expect the last few films I've done, like Rambo, whatever, he always saves the day.
That's right.
And now he drops the girl. Yeah. It's like, 4 minutes into the movie?
Yeah, that's right.
And already he's a loser.
Yeah.
And it kills his best friend's girlfriend. I thought, now that's an interesting...
But that's heavy baggage for the rest of the film.
Exactly right. Yeah. Matter of fact, it was so heavy, I don't know if we ever were able to top that scene. There's a problem there.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a singer who starts off with a high C. Yeah. Where's he going?
Well, now we move to a lighter side, which is the dance side of your skills. And I noticed you do the choreography of the boxing, and I'm sure you did the choreography of Staying Alive as well. But this was, on paper anyway, a sequel to Saturday Night Fever.
Right.
What was your brief on that, and how did you come to get the project and be able to control it like that?
I really had no interest in doing it. At the time, I just finished First Blood, And Jeffrey Katzenberg at the time was running Paramount, said, would you try this? And it was so odd because they had also that week come and said, do you want to do Godfather 3? And I said, no. They said, well, you can write it and direct it. I said, it's not my movie. It's Francis Coppola's movie. You can write and direct it. So now they come with Staying Alive. And it was the beginning of this kind of sequel thing. I read the screenplay, and it was very dark. He becomes an alcoholic and a drug addict, and his girlfriend dies, OD. I said, this is horrible. I said, let me take it home. I read it. True story. I had this pool. I threw it in the pool. Let's watch the screenplay sink. I was like hitting it. It was horrible. So I started with the name. I said, great name, Staying Alive. And I just wrote kind of a story of this man who thinks he's better than he is. And it started to come. And it literally started, again, having the idea, 2% of it. But Travolta at the time didn't. He was very, very nervous, very insecure. He was having, with weight and everything, and his career wasn't going well. So it was. I had to really give him a screenplay that he felt comfortable with, and also the kind of dancing. I had to make him look like this dancer to the point where, at the time, our competition was Flashdance. And Flashdance was great, and it was really well done and brilliant music, and I think sometimes a lot better than ours. But ours is supposed to be like more of a Broadway. Theirs was like
chorus line.
Chorus line, which is much more of an ensemble. And his stuff was like this great new music. So we had that battle back and forth. But anyway, what we try to do is take this John Travolta story of a working man trying to get into this rare air and how he has to, play the game with the girl and sell out and so on and so forth. Like we all do.
And was he easy to direct? In the end? You needn't answer if you don't.
Yeah, he was. What I like about John, though, but you have to be very careful when you're dealing with certain actors. Some actors I can be really tough with and say, that was truly horrible. Horrible. You're much better than that. And if you do that again, we're all going home. And that works for him. I said, the only reason you're here is I couldn't get the other actor. I mean, I'm joking around, but it's fun, Then you get other actors. They say, yesterday just wasn't as good as it could have been. And it's over. The person goes to his trailer and doesn't come out. All day. And literally, it's 9:30, you're done. Emotionally gone. So you got to be careful, like with John, and he's really great, but you can't be honest. You have to lie a little bit. It's okay. You know what I mean? So you have to really know. Every actor is a different instrument. You have to know how to do it. It takes a little bit of practice.
The pacing of the film was wonderful. Seeing it again last week,
Thank
I hadn't
you.
seen it since the 80s, and it just zipped by. Now, you mentioned you have a favorite editor. Was that editor working on that film?
At that time, yeah. Actually, he's a very. I don't use him now because he's too expensive. But his name is Don Zimmerman, and he's a multiple, Academy Award-winning actor, and his sons are nominees. But it's also great too working with new talent. Like the girl, Cindy Rhodes, had never danced before, and she was amazing. She was like a gymnast. And then there was Finola Hughes, who was a star in Cats, and putting them all together,
No, it really, I mean, that was, to me, I think if I had to choose one film that you directed, and in which you didn't star, that would be the one, really.
It's true, but this is a film, first day, I'm looking at the stage, and I'm looking at 50 women, 50 guys, and it hanging, jumping, and I said, this is not my world at all. I just got back doing First Blood, and I said, I can't do this. I'm literally sitting, I cannot finish this movie. We're into it one day. I said, this is not, people are coming up going, oh, I'm so sore, and my leg, you know what I mean? I'm getting rubbed and sweating, and I need I said, oh my God, this is such a different world. This is a very delicate world. And it took me a while. I had to go home and talk to my wife. I said, I'm going to kill myself. I really do not know how to direct this movie. And then I said, oh, you know what? Forget who you are now. Just start to go with, actually try to be a little bit more feminine when you're directing it. See what I mean? Try to be a little bit less, cool, smash. Try to be a little bit more artistic, esoteric, gentle. And then it started to work.
And with the clout you had after Rocky, were you able, like Coppola, to insist on rehearsal time, or were you have to go straight?
Yeah. But you know, it's just sometimes it's never enough rehearsal time. You think you have it, then this actor has to run off, or they don't want to rehearse. And I think that's a big problem. It's all about rehearsal. You can imagine if you're a sports team and you never practice, how could you ever win a game?
That's right.
Well, this is even more intense because this is forever. This is on film forever. And if an actor and a director and a writer, they all should be rehearsing because that's when you learn, does this work, does this not work? And a lot of actors today, and I have problems with them, is they don't like to learn their lines until that day.
Okay.
Oh, I'm telling you, or that night, we want to keep it fresh. And I said, you're keeping it stupid because you're not learning your lines. It's like, how do you, like learning a song in one day? You can't perform that song. You're going to be thinking about the song instead of the emotions. Period. And so but that's the new school. Many young actors believe it makes it more spontaneous and fresh. I said, if you're Brando or Streep, but you ain't. You have to what works. You have to find a thing that works for you. Don't try to copy other people's styles. But you know, some actors like to, and it works in some sort of cinema. But if you're under the time, you know, I usually my films I try to do them quickly. I think that sometimes I believe you sacrifice perfection because I think perfection is unattainable for speed and emotion and just being immediate. And I know it's imperfect. I know it's not right. I know all the moments haven't been caught, but it's good enough emotionally to keep the story going. You know, I talk to Clint Eastwood about that all the time. He'll do maybe 3 takes because he goes, that's enough. That's enough to tell the story. Beyond that, it's kind of like a director sometimes will drive himself crazy.
Kubrick, for example.
It's like, I've always believed an actor can only give you so much, and then after that they get confused, they get nervous, and it gets worse. So you have to know who and the abilities of your performers. Like he's great at take 2, take 3. By take 10, he's horrible because now he's thinking too much. So you have to really know. And again, that comes out of rehearsals, knowing who the players are.
Of course.
I got a good story about this.
Sure.
We were running behind schedule, and I had to shoot a montage. I go, oh my God, this montage would have taken like 5 days. So what I did is I came in there, brought everyone into one big room, all the dancers, and had 3 cameras. I took 1 camera and just stayed with John Travolta, and I worked with him. And the rest, I said to everyone, just dance and do whatever you want. Cartwheels, I said, catch it all, whatever. And then I sent a camera down when they're making the stage. I mean, just with regular light. I said, and just shoot what you can. Just no sound, nothing. And we put it all together and saved 4 days of filming. But none of that, absolutely zero, was choreographed. Isn't it funny? I say, okay, John, just do this. Cut. Do this, cut. And then I swear to God. And then the other dancers were just over there in the corner. They'd be scratching, doing a somersault, stretching. And you put it all together. Isn't it amazing?
It's the magic of the myth.
It's like, so there are no rules. It's crazy.
Well, now we've got some questions from our audience who, as I told you, are all in the film business. The first one I'll just read out, and then after this one, maybe those who want to ask questions ask for the mic. But this is from Krzysztof Slatnik. Are you here? Yeah, I'll read your question. How do you manage your writing process? Do you take a long time out or write in between other work?
Writing, I almost approach it like exercise. I get up maybe at 4:30 in the morning. It takes an hour to get going, and then I'll start to write about maybe 3 hours, and then it becomes repetitive. And the next day I get up, and even if I don't feel inspired, I'll sit there for those 3 hours until the brain says, okay, you must start to produce something. So I try to write quickly, and I follow a pattern just the way you would be if you were in the army or whatever, and then that gets me through it quickly. Some writers will take a year, 2 years. Everyone has a different process, but that's what I do. I
You
literally
write better in the morning, like
much
most
better.
great writers.
I used to write at night all the time when I was, but I found that everyone died. It was dark. It was creepy. It was really horrible. It was like very depressing. Then I realized Edgar Allan Poe used to write at night. Now I figure out why.
But just before we have the next question, it reminds me, your first writing was about your hero, Edgar Allan Poe.
Edgar Allan Poe.
And how come it's taken till 2009 to get a project really close to
I
getting on
know,
screen?
because nobody wants to do it. That's why.
And yet they've done all his stories.
I know, and no one cares about the fellow who actually wrote the stories. And at one time I wanted to do it, but I'm really not right for the part. And Sean Penn would have been great, Johnny Depp would have been great, Terrence Stamp would have been great back in the day. I mean, it really was. So they promised me after the next film or 2 films, I can do it. We'll do it for no money, probably maybe $12 million. And I'll have to shoot it like in Bulgaria somewhere, but I'm going to do it.
Okay, great.
And it'll be a disaster, but at least I did it. You know, it's like, whew, you walk around with something for 38 years. I wrote it 38 years ago.
What fascinates you about him? Actually?
It was the first time, every screenplay I was writing about was about me, about what I did, about going to school. You know, it was like very limited. And one day I was caught in the rain. I went into the library and I just started going through books and I came across this book, I grew up, and I started to go through it and I said, God, this is every struggling young artist. It's the same story. Obviously, he's much more brilliant than I would ever be, but it's the same thing of being ahead of your time. And trying to, I said, damn. That is timeless. Yeah. It's a timeless story. So that's why I wanted to.
You identified with him.
Absolutely, absolutely. You know, and I think every young artist, everyone who has a different vision, has a piece of Poe in him. Yeah. And you know, you're going to be criticized. People hate change. Really, they say, oh, why don't you change? Like in acting, they go, why doesn't he play something different? So I do a comedy, go, oh, it stinks. Why doesn't he go back to what he used to do? You're like, make up your mind. Yeah. Anyway, we all have something that we do special. You just got to stay with it.
It took you quite a while to do the latest Rocky film. And I think it might have been because a lot of people thought, okay, it's too long ago, you know, it's difficult to get finances. When Rocky was then a very big success, was it kind of like a very good feeling for you, and was it much easier for you to do the last Rambo film?
Yes, without the success of Rocky Balboa, there would have been no Rambo. The hardest thing, of course, they said, well, you're too old to play a boxer. And I said, I agree. But this is not a boxing movie. It's about a philosophy of getting older and how do you deal with, as we get older, people think life gets easier. It doesn't. It gets more complicated because the things that you love start to go away and die and friendship. So it becomes very, very emotional as you get older. And so they didn't want to make the movie. I mean, literally, studio says, we will never, ever make this movie over our dead body. And my career wasn't doing very well, so I was finished. And it wasn't until I walked in, I was at a restaurant in Mexico, and a man named Joe Roth, who ran Revolution Films, said, you know, can I read the screenplay? He read it, and he goes, you know, the producer doesn't like you very much. I said, I don't know why, but he says, his wife doesn't like you. I said, okay. So it's all these stupid things that keep moving. I said, well, I don't know why. I mean, she doesn't like me, but he goes, I like you, and I'm going to finance the movie. So he gave us $20 million to do the movie, but without him, never happened. And so yes, and to me, it's my greatest feeling, greatest victory, much more than the first one.
By seeing the clips yesterday and today, I'm asking myself, your Italian background, has it any influence in your work? I say the great films of the 50s, which influenced from Italia, which influenced a lot of Scorsese. Did they influence you as well? Neorealism. Was there something in your work?
Not really, not really. I mean, I think because I'm only half Italian, but I think at that time, the ethnic change was happening in Hollywood. We were going away from very, very, I would say, washed, blonde or blue-eyed actors, and you're going to Pacino and De Niro. And exactly, the whole Godfather thing was happening. So I got caught up in that because before that, it was very, very difficult. If you were Italian, or Italian-looking, you know, usually played like I did in Capone with Ben Gazzara. You know, you're always the hitman, the mug. I was always the mugger. I mugged everybody. Jack Lemmon, Woody Allen, everybody.
Hi. My question, I have two questions. Someone asked you about your writing process. That you write for 3 hours in the morning. Do you write a screenplay from beginning to end, or do you have some kind of structure that you write?
No, I write it from beginning to end. And what I'll try to do is I write longhand. So on a legal pad, I'll go, goes to here, sees his mother, goes to the store. So I'll have like 10 things. Beats where he's going, gets on a horse, goes swimming, boom, boom, boom. And I do that. And I know in my heart, 80% of it will be no good. But you're getting through the screenplay. You're getting it done. Because the rewrite is always more fun and much more enjoyable. I don't believe people should look for perfection or even 50% perfection in the first draft. It's always going to be kind of this, like a child scribbling, but you did it. And the main thing for me is to, once you have that accomplishment, let's say you could do it in 2 weeks, 3 weeks. Again, maybe 10% will be good, but you've now have this sense of accomplishment, you did it, and the rewriting process starts, and that's when the fun begins. So that's what I do. I literally will go out, find, okay, 10 beats. Next day, it gets a little easier. Okay, next 5 scenes, fine. And before you know it. But then again, there's also, this happens. You can get 3/4 of the way through and you realize this screenplay doesn't work. It's one of those 3/4 screenplays. It's 75% there and the rest, you say, damn. That's happened a few times too. You think your story is going to make it and it's more of a half-hour movie.
At that point, are you ever tempted to bring in a collaborator?
You know, I never have, but I wouldn't. That
Script
might be a good.
doctor.
Actually, that could be a good idea. I think sometimes you bring in a fellow writer and you start to kick it around. Like I just hired a team of writers to adapt this book because I didn't want to. The book was 900 pages, and I have other things to do. So I brought in a team,
Right.
because they could do it much faster than a solo man, for sure.
And Robert Town, for example, on The Godfather, rewrote the garden scene with Brando for Francis. You know, that kind of...
You know, there's no
help.
doubt. It
Yeah.
really helps because you do get stale.
Yeah.
No question about it. You get tired, brain fatigue, and a fresh look. You just have to make sure he's a friend of yours and not an enemy, because they'll tell you to go that way.
My other question was, you were talking about being a serious filmmaker. Do you consider yourself a serious filmmaker?
Oh God,
question.
I'm serious about getting it done, you know, and trying to. But I don't consider myself serious in a way where there's a certain kind of reputation that you're very political, that you're going to do things about the human condition. So that's usually considered a serious filmmaker. Like, if you look at Scorsese, is he a serious filmmaker? Or is he a filmmaker? He would say he's a filmmaker. Coppola is a filmmaker. A serious filmmaker, I think, of someone who's just very, usually heavy and dark.
Pretentious, usually.
Well, I don't want to say pretentious, but they live and die for their work, and they don't give a shit if anybody goes to see it. They're serious. As a matter of fact, if it makes money, that's terrible. That's horrible. That's serious.
That's right, exactly.
It's a question about Rocky 4, and about making serious movies. It's like I was 8 years old, and for me it's the typical end 80s propaganda Cold War movie, and for me
Right.
it was sure Russia is the empire of evil. My mother had to explain me, well, it's not that simple.
No.
And how did you explain your son?
Well, there's, like with Rocky, there is, in the film, like you're talking about with Rocky 4 and Drago, well, there's a perfect example. At the very end of the movie, Rocky says, I don't know anything about you, you don't know anything about me, but I got to know you as a man in this ring. And if people could meet each other face to face, they wouldn't have as many problems as letting our political leaders cause problems. And that's what that was about. So we had to make Russia the bad guy because that's the way we see it in America. But then we find out they're really not the bad guy. It's the politicians that create this because that's good for business, you know, to keep company. Yeah, absolutely. So I've never really thought of the Russia as the bad guys. Then again, when I did Rambo 3, and well, we had Vietnam, that was our disaster. Then Russia had Afghanistan, that was their disaster. So, you know, you try to put it in proportion and be fair about it. But I've never really, you know, a lot of the liberal press, our press is very, very liberal in America, you always use Rambo as a right-wing tool, like Stallone hates liberals, Stallone hates minorities, Stallone's a racist. I said, first of all, Rambo lives in the jungle. He's neutral. He doesn't even live in America, and he'll kill anybody. He has no problem.
Oslo.
Peter,
Yes.
we gotta finish.
Yes, we're running out of time, I'm
Oh,
afraid,
sorry,
but
okay.
we're really happy and
Well,
privileged
thank you.
to have
Thank you.
had you share your secrets with us this morning. Thank you so
My
much,
pleasure,
and
thank you.
and good luck with Edgar Allan Poe. Good luck.
Okay, I'll be
with,
back if I ever do that. I'd love
That's
to
right,
come
we'll
back
have it at
and
the Zurich Film
try
Festival.
to explain it. Yeah.
Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Thank you. My son is a big fan. You wouldn't sign this photo of my son, would you?
Sure.
For Rodney.